2019, I had the opportunity to study abroad in New Zealand. It was such an incredible opportunity to be able to learn about the Maori culture and the New Zealand film industry. As an Indigenous person myself from the Diné tribe, I couldn't help but find a lot of similarities between the Indigenous communities here in the US and the Native community there in New Zealand. The one thing that stuck out to me the most was how Indigenous women are represented and work within the film industries. My name is Legend Yazi, and I'm currently a junior at Arizona State University, majoring in film production with a focus on directing. I am also a Full Circle Fellow of the Sundance Indigenous program, which is a fellowship that aims to help upcoming and young Indigenous filmmakers and introduce them into the film industry. In the US, Native women are given the stereotypes of Indian princess or are often over-sexualized in the Disney movies Peter Pan and Pocahontas.
What made the red man red? What made the red man red?
See, don't know what for. Why do all my dreams stand just around the river bend? I'm so sorry.
For what? This? I've got
In the clips just shown, Tiger Lily is given the pan-Indian look, and in Pocahontas, she's put into very revealing clothing and also suggestive positions. And this is from films that are from a non-Indigenous point of view, from non-Indigenous filmmakers. The films that I watched from New Zealand about Maori people didn't really have a lot of strong, independent Maori women characters. Most of the films that we screened for class were by non-Maori people, but about Maori subjects. And there was the exception with Taika Waititi, who is Maori, except most of his films are from the male point of view. The one film that we did watch that centered Maori women was Whale Rider, which is kind of iffy because it's from a non-Indigenous filmmaker. The character Paikia is a young Maori girl who is trying to find her place within her community and her culture, which is very male-dominated.
No good to you reckon?
But I was not the leader my grandfather was expecting, and by being born, I broke the line back to the ancient ones.
And when it comes to actual Indigenous and Native made films, the women are still portrayed in caretaking roles as the mother, the sister, and the grandma, and never put into the major character roles. An example of this happening in actual Indigenous made films is in Smoke Signals. The film Smoke Signals revolves around the character Victor and his growth throughout the film. There is one Native woman character in the film, and her name is Susie.
You're telling me all these stories about my father, and I don't even know if they're true. Hey, maybe you don't even know me.
I know more about him than you do.
You don't know anything.
Your dad talked about that fire every day. He cried about it. He wished he could have changed it. He wished he hadn't run away. But you have to remember one thing, Victor. He ran back into that burning house looking for you.
And in the clip just shown, Susie is talking about the truth about Victor's father, and this is a common occurrence in a lot of films. And the women characters in the film, like Susie, are created to uplift and support the male characters. She's talking to Victor and she's telling him the truth about his father, and that's helping him grow and helping his story move along. While in the meantime, she doesn't have a story. It's not about her, it's about him. But as time progresses and as more Indigenous women are entering the field, there's become more complex and more three-dimensional characters who are their own, who are not there to support the other Native men. For example, in Sidney Freeland's film, Drunktown's Finest, she features two major characters who are women. One who is a cisgender woman and another who is a trans woman.
You're adopted?
Yeah. My real parents died in a car crash when I was 7. I'm here looking for my biological family.
Who it is?
Felicia from Facebook.
Oh, hey, girl.
What are you up to?
Just waiting for you to call.
I've met so many incredible and talented filmmakers through Sundance, and one of those filmmakers is Keyshawn Brad. And I had the opportunity to talk to her about her work.
Yeah. Ha, Maroe, Aka, Namana, Nana, Anisa, Keyshawn Brad. Hello, I am Keyshawn Brad. I'm a Comanche filmmaker, and I've been with Sundance for, I think, a couple of years now. I've done a couple of different fellowships with them. I've done the screenwriting fellowship, and I was a full circle fellow like you in the past when it first started. And currently I am a Native Lab filmmaking fellow.
When you first started doing filmmaking, what made you want to do that?
When I first started filmmaking, I think what really drove me into filmmaking was the idea of having Native people in modern day stories. People were doing Native stories, but they were still reservation stories. And I feel that, you know, there's so much more to Native people rather than just being on reservations, although that is a part of the lifestyle and that is, you know, the life of some Native people. I am considered, I guess, an urban Indian. And I think one of the things that got me into filmmaking was the idea of me trying to show a different lifestyle through Native eyes.
Obviously, you've heard about Maritamita.
Yes, the queen,
Yeah.
an Indigenous queen, yes.
Yes. So I just want to ask, like, how she's impacted your life.
Fortunately, I never got the chance to meet Marita,
Mm-hmm.
but I've heard nothing but great things about her. And when I learned of her legacy, I was really shocked and surprised. And she opened so many barriers. She did documentary work. Usually when you see people do documentary, it's all these men that are like, oh, I broke through here and I could do that. But she was able to show a story and take all the risks and dangers of being an Indigenous woman, of being a journalist, of being an activist, and mixing it in her personal life and then mixing it in with her culture as well. And I think that's something a lot of journalists don't have the opportunity or chance to do, is to dive deep into stories that relate to you and your people. So I felt that she was able to do that, and she is just amazing for doing that. She's a powerhouse. And the fact that we're still talking about her, and we'll be talking about her from generations from now, is really amazing. And she just showed so many Indigenous women here in the States that we could do things like that. We can be in the face of military men or police officers, and we can still get the truth, and we can definitely portray our vision and our story, and we have nothing to be afraid of. You know, so I feel like she's a mother to many Indigenous women who are into film, and she's a mother to many Indigenous people who want to dive into these deep, risk-taking stories.
Where do you see the future of film going?
I see the future of film within people of color and within women of color, most importantly. I see the future of film being dominated and being taken in by people and women of color. I definitely see a colorful future in terms of Indigenous women in film. I hope that I can help harness a new gate, a new opening, and a new section where we talk about sexuality, and we talk about sex, we talk about sexuality, we talk about things that make Indigenous people uncomfortable, because I feel that the more you talk about things that make you uncomfortable, the more you're actually able to heal.
Do you mind talking about your project coming up?
Okay, so my film is The Daily Life of Mistress Red. It's about a female Native American dominatrix for hire who whips apologies out of her white slaves. And I feel that this film is a mockumentary, so it's a comedy, and you're supposed to laugh, which is totally fine. And I feel it's time for this film to come out because there's a lot of things within our political situation that stress me out. I didn't want to talk about women's issues and put them in a victim position. So I thought with this character, I can make her a hero. So growing up, I had zero Native women role models to look up to that were in film. Native boys have always had Victor, they had Thomas, they had these characters who were trying to heal parts of themselves and to become a better person, but yet Native women have only had mothers, grandmothers, girlfriends, etc. no actual female character that was strong and did something within her own.
Do you have any advice for the younger generation, the generation that's coming into this next decade?
Oh, I love this. This is my favorite part.
Oh my god.
This is my favorite part. This is my favorite part. I always get asked this, and I love it because my answer changes, but it's always the same principle. For future Native filmmakers, I definitely recommend you to strengthen your skills and own that vision that you carry, because no one else will be able to write something the same. Although there are Native filmmakers, Native writers, for example myself, I may not have the same story that you do. So your story is valued, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And definitely know that this road is challenging, but never quit. Never give up, never quit. It's always on the go. 2020 will definitely be the decade where we see more stories, we see more Native filmmakers coming into their own, we get a huge group of female filmmakers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, I'll see you soon in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Some Indigenous women filmmakers that I look up to and who really inspire me are Pisha and Bread, Sydney Freeland, and Merita Mita. Sydney Freeland is a Navajo filmmaker like myself, and she made films like Junktown's Finest, which is a groundbreaking Indigenous film that not only talks about reservation life in a fresh way, but also features 2 main Native women characters. Merita Mita is a Maori filmmaker. She originally started working in documentaries and then slowly started working in narrative films. Her legacy has inspired and impacted so many Indigenous filmmakers, and especially Native women all over the world, not just in New Zealand. Merita is also the first and only Maori woman to write and direct her own dramatic feature film.
We'll finish cutting the ends.
Is going to Awaki the same as dying?
Yes, that's what the Pākehā calls it.
Is going to heaven the same as going to Awaki?
No. All Māoris go to Hawaii. Some Pākehās go to hell.
The reason why this topic is so important is because the way that people are represented in the media often affects the way that they see themselves and how confident they are in themselves and mental health issues. For example, when I was growing up, I didn't see a lot of positive representation of Native women in film, or anywhere for that matter. And it really affected the way that I saw myself. I didn't relate to any of the people on screen that I saw that were supposedly Native Americans. And it made me not proud of my culture. And this is true for a lot of other Native girls out there. This is why it's so important to show our faces on the screen. That little girl who's growing up right now needs to know that she can be whoever she wants to be. She can do whatever she wants.
2020 will definitely be the decade where we see more stories, we see more Native filmmakers coming into their own, we get a huge group of female filmmakers.